The weight of the gun. The desert stretched endlessly, a vast sea of gold and silence. Eli Wade rode alone, his horse breathing hard under the burning sun. On his back, a rifle. On his hip, a Colt that had spoken too many times. He had been a name once, a name that men whispered in saloons and sheriffs wrote down before dying. But now, Eli Wade was just a shadow, trying to vanish before the world remembered his sins. He reached a dry ridge where the wind howled like a wounded animal. There he stopped, dismounted, looked at his reflection in the metal of the gun, the same weapon that had taken more lives than he could count. He dug a hole with his hands, sweat mixing with sand, and whispered, "Let it end here." He placed the coat inside, covered it with sand, and stood there in silence, his hand trembling. The wind rose, hissing softly, like the earth itself was listening. "I'm done killing," but the desert didn't believe him. The tracks that never fade. Eli rode west, leaving behind the small mound where the colt now slept. Every few miles he looked back, and though he saw nothing, he could feel the weight of that buried gun pressing on his chest. He passed through dry canyons and ghost towns where the doors creaked in the wind. At every stop, someone stared too long. Every time someone whispered, "Ain't that Wade?" and he'd lower his head and ride faster. He wasn't running from men anymore. He was running from the echo of his own legend. On the third night, he camped near a lonely well. The stars were cruel, too many, too bright. He sat beside the fire, thinking of the last man he'd shot, Jonas Pike, his brother in arms, his brother in blood. They'd robbed banks together, bled together, and ended up pointing guns at each other over gold that neither lived to spend. The fire cracked softly. Eli whispered, "I buried it, Jonas. It's done." But the wind changed. It came cold, bringing a voice that didn't belong to the night. "The desert don't forget, Eli." He froze. The flames flickered. The sand shifted as if something was moving beneath it. He stood, hand instinctively going to his empty holster. The voice came again, closer, almost inside his head. "You buried steel, but not sin." The return of the wind. At dawn, Eli found hoofprints circling his camp. They weren't his. No riders, no dust trails, just tracks that appeared out of nowhere and vanished into nothing. His horse was restless, eyes wide, nostrils flaring. Something unseen was out there. Eli mounted and rode toward the old mission ruins, a place he once hid after a shootout years ago. He needed walls, a roof, a moment to think. The mission was just bones now, stone arches half buried, a cross tilted against the horizon. Inside, shade and silence. He tied the horse, stepped into the dark. And then he saw it. There, on the altar, rested his colt. The same colt he'd buried 2 days before, covered in dust, but unmistakably the same. He stopped breathing. No one else could have brought it there. No one else could have known. He picked it up slowly, as if touching a ghost. The metal was cold, too cold, and carved into the barrel were fresh words that hadn't been there before. The desert remembers. Eli staggered back. The world seemed to shift, the light bending.
He turned, and through the doorway, far across the dunes, he saw a figure watching him. Tall, still. The wind blew, and the figure vanished like smoke.
The Curse of the Desert. That night, Eli couldn't sleep. The colt lay beside him, heavy as regret. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw the face of Jonas Pike, blood on his lips, whispering something Eli couldn't quite hear. When the morning came, the horizon was strange, too quiet, too wide. He decided to ride back east to the river Thames. Maybe, somehow, there he could wash the desert off his soul. But as he rode, he realized something terrifying. The landscape didn't change. The same ridge, the same cactus with the bullet scar. He turned north and ended up at the same well from 2 nights before. He turned south and came upon the same mission again. The desert had closed its circle around him. He was trapped inside its memory. That night, he lit no fire. He sat with the colt in his lap, whispering, "What do you want from me?" The wind answered softly, with sand sliding like whispers. "We only take what's ours." And Eli understood. The desert hadn't kept his gun. It had kept him. The ghost of Jonas Pike. The next day, Eli found a trail of footprints that weren't his. They led toward the dunes, where the heat shimmered like glass. He followed them, and at the top of the ridge, he froze. Jonas Pike was standing there. Same coat, same scar across the cheek, the same man Eli had shot in the chest years ago. But his eyes were hollow, reflecting only the sun. Jonas? The figure didn't speak, just watched him. Eli raised the gun, though his hand trembled. "This ain't real." Jonas smiled, the kind of smile that knows more than it should. "You buried the gun, Eli, but you didn't bury me." The wind howled, carrying sand between them. Jonas stepped closer, the air twisting around his boots. Eli backed away. Every instinct screamed to shoot, but something deeper, older, said not to. "I didn't mean," Eli started. Jonas raised a hand. "Meanin' don't change the dead." Then, as the wind roared, Jonas vanished. Only footprints remained, leading back toward the mission, and the echo of his voice lingered in the wind. "You'll carry it till the desert forgives." The price of memory. Eli wandered for days or weeks. Time was no longer real. The sun burned his skin raw. The wind tore at his clothes. He didn't eat, didn't sleep, only walked, always hearing that same whisper, "The desert remembers." One afternoon, a storm rose from the horizon, black clouds swallowing the sky. The sand turned to blades, cutting his face. He sought shelter in a dry ravine, clutching the colt to his chest. Lightning cracked, and in its light he saw shapes in the storm. Faces, hundreds of them, all the men he'd killed. Their mouths moved in silence. Then one voice rose above the others. Jonas, "You can't bury what you are." Eli screamed into the wind, "Then what am I?" The thunder answered, "Ours." The storm swallowed him whole. When it passed, Eli lay still in the sand.
his hat gone, his skin pale as bone, and the colt half buried again beside his hand.
The mark of the desert. Silence returned, thick and endless. For a long time, Eli Wade didn't move. The desert watched. And then, something changed. The wind stirred, raising a thin veil of sand over his body. It shimmered, alive, breathing. Eli coughed, opened his eyes. The sun still hung in the sky, but time itself felt paused. He sat up, pressed a hand to his chest. No wound, no blood, only a mark burned into the flesh. A half circle, like the setting sun, the seal of the desert. He breathed in. The air smelled like rain, impossible in that place. Around him, the horizon seemed sharper, the sounds clearer. The wind spoke in an ancient tongue, and somehow Eli understood. He stood, the ground pulsing beneath his boots. Every step he took left a dark print, as if the desert recognized him. The colt lay nearby, half buried again. But now, strange symbols glowed along its barrel, words carved by the sand itself. He lifted it. Same weight, different soul. The mission was gone. The valley changed. No sound, no bird, no trace of life. Only the wind whispering one word over and over. Wade. He walked, not knowing where to go. The dunes shifted like breathing beasts. Visions came and went. Jonas, the gold, the gun, the graves, and then something else. A calling. The earth cracked open before him, a deep, narrow fissure. From it rose a sound, not wind, not earth, but a melody, old, sad, human. Eli gazed into the darkness. It stared back, and he understood. The desert had spared him to serve, not to live, not to die, but to guard. He fell to his knees, trembling. "What do you want from me?" The answer came with the wind. Memory. And the whole desert moved, the sun burning brighter, lighting the mark on his chest. He realized then he could never leave. He belonged to the desert now. The wind caressed his face like a final mercy. Eli pressed the coat to his heart and said, "Then let me become part of you." The sand rose around him, swirling in a golden storm. And when it settled, Eli Wade was gone. Only footprints remained, soon erased by the wind. Sometimes when the desert grows still, a voice can be heard. A man whispering his own name, trying to remember who he was. The legend begins. Time passed, though in the desert, time is patient. Years, maybe decades. The dunes changed, the wind shifted, but the valley remained the same. And that's where the stories began. Travelers swore they'd seen a lone rider under the moonlight, always heading the same direction. Others spoke of footprints that started and ended nowhere, or distant gunshots followed by a rough, lonely voice.
The Apaches called him the Keeper of the Wind, the cowboys the outlaw ghost. They said on moonless nights a man in a wide hat stood on the dunes, silent, watching. He never attacked, never spoke, but those who saw him felt something strange, a mix of fear and mercy, as if he carried a sorrow too heavy to die. Once a bounty hunter claimed he met him. The man looked alive, he said, but his eyes were stone. I asked him his name. He said, "The desert remembers for me." The story spread, and the name of Eli Wade returned, not as a murderer, but as a warning, a spirit of dust and atonement, a man the desert wouldn't let die, so others might learn the cost of sin. And so, the desert gained a new legend, a guardian made of dust, memory, and silence.
The Trial of the Wind. One night, long after Eli had vanished, a group of travelers crossed the Jornada del Muerto, the journey of the dead. The wind screamed, the stars vanished, and their compasses stopped spinning. They camped by a cracked valley, seeking warmth. Around the fire, a young gunslinger heard footsteps, steady, slow. He stood, gun drawn. From the darkness, a man appeared, hat low, coat long, dust clinging to his shoulders. No horse, no shadow, but his steps echoed as if the ground followed him. "You lost, old man?" the gunslinger asked. The stranger lifted his face, eyes dark as wells. "I'm right where I've always been." "Where's that?" The man looked toward the horizon, in what's left of a gunslinger's soul. The fire flickered. The young man saw his skin looked like sand, his chest marked by the half-sun symbol. "Who are you?" The stranger smiled, sad, weary. "No one the desert ain't already forgotten." The wind rose, the fire died. When it lit again, the man was gone. But half buried in the ashes was a single bullet casing, carved on it, E.W. The young gunslinger kept it, and when he grew old, he told and retold the story. Because in the West, what the wind doesn't take, memory turns into legend. The desert never forgets. They say that on certain nights, when the full moon burns over Nevada's sands, you can still hear distant gunfire, echoes rolling through the dunes like heartbeats. Some say it's bandits, others say it's just the wind, but those who know, it's Eli Wade, still out there, guarding the desert. He's never seen in flesh, but his presence lingers. When someone dies unjustly on that land, the wind changes, grows cold, and sometimes you can hear spurs, slow steps, and the metallic click of a hammer drawn back. And before a storm, some swear they see him, a man in a hat, standing at the horizon, watching, still, silent, waiting. The desert keeps him, and he keeps the desert. Between the living and the dead, between sin and forgiveness, he's what remains when the dust settles. And when the desert hungers for justice, it calls his name. And if you listen close, on a quiet night, you might hear a voice, dry and tired, whispering, "The desert remembers for me." And the wind replies, softly, faithfully, "The desert never forgets."